Have you ever really stopped to think about what's inside a glass of scotch? I mean, it's more than just an aged spirit, right? It's a story, and it's written in this language of law and chemistry. It's a code, and in this explainer, we are going to crack it.
Okay, so let's just get right to it. What is it that truly separates Scotch from every other whiskey on the planet? Is it just the fact that it's made in Scotland? Well, yeah, that's part of it, but believe me, that's just the very beginning of the story.
The reality is that Scotch is defined by an incredibly strict set of rules. It's a legal and chemical framework that dictates every single step of the process, from the very first grain of barley to the final drop in your glass. This code, this is what gives Scotch its soul.
And that code kicks in right at the beginning, in a process called mashing. This is where we run into the first, and you could argue one of the most important rules in the entire world of whiskey.
And here is that first huge split in the road. See, to make alcohol, you first have to turn starch into sugar. The law for Scotch is absolute on this. You can only use the natural enzymes that are already inside the malted barley. No outside help. Meanwhile, lots of other whiskeys, like many in the US, are allowed to add commercial enzymes to speed things up and get more alcohol out of the grain.
So, just to be super clear, these endogenous enzymes, they're the original toolkit that comes built right into the grain itself. Think about it this way. The solution to the problem of turning starch into sugar has to come from within the barley. This isn't just a technical detail, It's really a philosophy about purity and staying true to your source.
And that right there is the whole point. By banning outside enzymes, the law forces distillers to rely completely on the quality of their grain. It creates this unbreakable chain between the farm and the final spirit. It's basically a legally required ban on taking shortcuts.
So that first rule really sets the stage. Now that we have our sugary liquid, which is called wort, we get to what many people believe is the single most important stage for creating flavor: fermentation. This is not just about making alcohol, this is about creating character.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote from the research says it all. While all the other steps are important for shaping the spirit, the vast, vast majority of the core flavor compounds, they are born right here during fermentation.
On the surface, the process sounds simple enough. Yeast eats sugar, and it produces alcohol. Easy. But the magic, the real secret, is in the byproducts. As that yeast is working, it's also creating this incredibly complex chemical soup of hundreds of different compounds that we call congeners. And these are the building blocks of taste and aroma.
And this is so cool. You can see what some of these congeners actually smell and taste like. Esters, they often give us those wonderful fruity notes. Think banana, pear, or apple. Phenols can bring in those spicy or even smoky flavors. The specific mix of all of these, which is decided by the yeast in the fermentation time, is what starts to build the whiskey's unique personality. So, after fermentation, we've basically got a strong, funky beer called wash. The next step is to concentrate that alcohol and refine the flavors through distillation. And you guessed it, the rules here create another massive difference between different types of whiskey. The law for Scotch says you cannot distill the spirit higher than 94.8% alcohol by volume. Why such a specific number? It's to make sure the spirit holds on to flavor from its raw materials. Now compare that to American straight whiskeys, which are often distilled below 80%. This big difference in the distillation ceiling has a huge impact on what the final spirit tastes like.
Here's a great way to think about it. Distillation is like an editor. Fermentation writes this long, complex flavor story. The closer you distill to pure alcohol, the more of that flavorful story you edit out. So the lower strength for American bourbon means more of that original story stays in. The higher limit for Scotch allows for a cleaner spirit, but one that still has plenty of character.
So, we have our brand new spirit. It's clear, it's strong, and it's full of potential. But it's not Scotch yet. Now comes the long, slow process of maturation. And the laws about the barrels. Well, this is one of the most dramatic differences in the entire whiskey world.
Okay, so for American bourbon, the rule is simple. It must be aged in a brand new charred oak cask. Period. This gives it a huge immediate hit of flavor: vanilla, spice, caramel. But Scotch, on the other hand, is almost always matured in used casks. Often, these are barrels that have already held bourbon or sherry. It's a completely different philosophy, creating a much more subtle, slower conversation between the spirit and the wood.
Over all those years in the warehouse, the cask is basically performing three little miracles.
First, it subtracts things. The char layer acts like a filter, removing any harsh, sulfury notes. Second, it adds things. It pulls out delicious compounds from the wood itself, like vanillin. And third, it interacts. It acts like a catalyst, helping the spirit create entirely new, complex, fruity notes all on its own. It's this incredible, slow transformation.
All right, we've seen how the rules of the process shape the spirit. But what protects the name Scotch itself? What stops someone from making it somewhere else? This brings us to the final, ironclad piece of the code, the legal protection tied to its home.
This protection has a name. It's called a geographical indication, or a GI. It's a really powerful legal concept around the world that basically says a product's name, quality, and reputation are all tied directly to where it's from and exactly how it's made. The most famous example, of course, is champagne. You can make sparkling wine absolutely anywhere in the world, but you can only legally call it champagne if it's from that one specific region of France and follows their rules. Well, it's the exact same principle for Scotch whiskey. It must be made in Scotland according to the code, no exceptions.
So who are the guardians of this code? That would be the Scotch Whisky Association, or the SWA. They're basically the industry's watchdog. They hunt down counterfeit products all over the globe and take legal action against anyone who misuses the name. They are the ones who make sure that when you buy a bottle of Scotch, you're getting the real deal, a product that has followed every single one of these rules.
So when you put it all together, it becomes really clear. The unique character of Scotch isn't some happy accident. It is the direct, intentional result of its legally enforced limitations.
And it's funny, you might think a code strict would be restrictive, that it would stifle creativity. But it's actually the opposite. This rigid framework forces distillers to be creative within the rules, and that's what leads to the incredible diversity we see from distillery to distillery. The code doesn't stifle Scotch, it defines it.
This strict code has defined and protected Scotch for generations. But in a world that's constantly innovating, it does raise some interesting questions for the future. Are these rules a shield that protects quality, or could they become a cage that limits potential? Now that you can read the code written in every glass, the next time you taste it, will it ever be the same?